editing. Welcome back to another episode of Policy for Normal People. I'm your host, Christy Amada. It's been a few months. I come along whenever I've got an interesting conversation to have, and I hope that you will find this one as fascinating, informative as I am. Our invisible warriors is our theme today. Are we keeping our promise to women veterans? With me today, and I'm excited to welcome her, Nancy Becher is the founder of Invisible Warriors, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to support, connect, and empower women veterans through community, resources, and spaces designed for belonging, growth, and leadership. Nancy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really excited about being here.
It's wonderful to have you. And remind us again, I know you're in Alabama. That's the headquarters of Invisible Warriors. And what city or town are you in or near?
We are in Huntsville, Alabama, which is in the northern part of Alabama. We're actually located in a military town. Redstone Arsenal is here. The Space Force is moving in here. We have NASA here. It's a big and growing bigger community.
Fascinating. So military and scientific complex there, it sounds like. Very good. I came across your website, invisiblewarriors.org, and I'd invite anyone listening to the show today to check that out. We'll talk more about that, and Nancy will tell you more. I was really struck in our earlier conversations, just the two of us and Nancy, before we decided to do this episode together, about all of the things that I did not know, was not aware of, what women veterans experience, and even some of the challenges that they face during their time in service. So anxious to talk to you about some of those stories. Also, true to the nature of the show, going to get into a little bit about how policy has affected, for better or worse, the challenges that women face in the military in the United States, and talk about what some recent developments have been in that regard. But first, Nancy, tell us a little bit about you and Invisible Warriors. What inspired you to found the organization?
Long story, and I don't know how interesting it is, but I never envisioned myself doing anything like this. I was a business consultant for 35 years. When I met my husband, who was actually in the Marine Corps, he'd been in the Corps for 23 years. And shortly after I met him, I was in a car accident and wound up not being able to even get out of bed. And after about a year and a half of just feeling sorry for myself, and not even wanting to be in this life any longer, I was struck literally on the back of my head by what I call a Gibbs slap. If you've ever watched NCIS Gibbs, Jethro Gibbs, who would come along behind someone who was being stupid and he would slap them on the back of the head, and that's known as a Gibbs slap. And I was laying in bed feeling sorry for myself one morning, and I literally got this smack on the back of my head, and I'm looking around and there's no one there, and I went, okay, God, what are you trying to tell me? That hurt. And I distinctly heard, you're not dying from this. Your life is altered and changed, but it's not ending. Get up, quit feeling sorry for yourself, and start supporting others who need your help. And that really and truly is the original inspiration for doing something. Because of my husband being in the military, most everything that we did was, once I actually was able to get up and get going again, was going to military functions. We would go to the American Legion. We would go to parades where you'd see all the veterans in their uniforms. We would go to the VA. And I was struck repeatedly by the fact that there were no women, or very few women. And that made me start to question and to think. And so I started doing research. I love doing research. I had my doctoral degree was mainly on how to research. And so I started looking into things and asking questions. And when we would go to one of these functions and I would see a woman, I would ask questions, and was inevitably struck by the fact that even though women have been an active part of our military since before the Revolutionary War, they have gotten very little recognition. And what they do get when they do get recognized is, yeah, you were just an admin, or yeah, you served behind the scenes, or it's the men that were really doing all the work and you just provided papers for us. And so the women themselves would not even admit to being veterans, and they didn't know they could get veteran benefits. They didn't realize that they could go back to school and have it paid for in many circumstances. They didn't know they could get help with jobs and resume writing and all of these things. And so they would just implode and oftentimes would not even leave their homes. I have members who haven't left their home except to go to doctor's appointments and things like that for over 2 years because they were tired of being stigmatized and looked down on and not taken seriously as warriors. So that's really why Invisible Warriors got started, because I said, this has got to change. Not from a women are better than men standpoint, but from the fact that women and men both have the right and the value of signing on that line and stepping forth and saying, I'm ready to serve my country if that means life and death. It's a whole lot different than my sitting in bed feeling sorry for myself. They literally were out there potentially fighting to serve our country. And they need to have a voice behind them saying, you serve too, you deserve respect.
I want to say first, Nancy, I'm very sorry for the experience and trauma and setbacks that you described you went through. So often, life changes that hit us, as you said, literally in the head, can be devastating, and you feel like there's no path forward. But oftentimes, it leads to amazing things like you founding this organization to help women veterans that people you wouldn't have even seen yourself do, as you were saying. So kudos to you first. Thank you for your service to our service women. You brought up a couple of things that struck me, and I know we'll talk more about this probably later in the show, but not seeing women when you were going to events and things. I grew up in Grafton, West Virginia, which is very well known for its Memorial Day parades. It's a big affair and very nicely done. And ever since I was old enough to participate in from kindergarten all the way through high school, the community walked in this parade, and along with all of the clubs and societies and groups, really a tremendous support that I'm used to seeing through my youth and growing up that I don't see quite as much of anymore. I come from a long line of military veterans myself, but they're all male. And so it didn't occur to me to question that in the way that you did. So I think that's the first step, right? Is awareness and knowing, hey, something doesn't look right. And I also was listening to what you said about women have served ever since the Revolutionary War. And that's absolutely true, because the recent Deborah Sampson Act 2020 was passed in Congress. Deborah Sampson was correct me if I'm wrong, but she dressed as a man to serve in the Revolutionary War, I believe, right?
Yes, she did. Absolutely. And she was just one of many, many, many.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what a great example to drive home the point that women have always supported the country and served, even when they were denied recognition, denied obviously deserved awards, and just access to the same services that their male counterparts had. So going back to your organization for a moment, Invisible Warriors, how did you decide on the title, and in particular, the invisible part? Do you still feel, I guess, that women are invisible to many Americans in the context of their military service?
Absolutely. I can give you two right today examples of the invisibility. Across the country, businesses and communities will put up parking spaces with signs that say veteran or military parking, which is an honor for them to be. It's like the handicap, but it's for military.
Sure.
Women in the city talk to me all the time about the fact that they will park in the military parking spot of one particular business, which is generally male dominated. It's a big box store for tools and those kinds of things. But they will park in this parking spot and they will get accosted. Literally, men will run up to them and start pounding on their car doors and hoods and screaming at them about how dare they take up that valuable parking spot away from a man.
So they're just rushing to judgment that because it's a woman, there's no possible way that they could be a veteran as well.
Absolutely. So we created stickers for your back windshield. We wanted license plates, but that's a fight for another day. But we did create stickers that say women serve too. And you can put that proudly. Now, a lot of the women will say, well, if somebody did that to me, I would bop them. But I go, yeah, right. Let me see you actually do it rather than just going, I'm sorry, and moving.
And the bigger picture of this is just ignorance, right? It's lack of awareness. And I hate to say it, but there's some prejudice still attached to it, right?
Yeah. And another story that happens around the country is on Veterans Day, many restaurants will give free meals to veterans. Mm-hmm. And repeatedly, over and over again, I hear and have seen for myself where a man and his wife or a man and a woman will go into a restaurant and sit and eat. The man doesn't even get questioned. He may actually not even be a veteran, but the waitress or waiter will say, thank you for your service, sir, and your meal's free today. They will then turn and give the bill to the woman. And when the woman or the man says, no, she's the veteran, she served too, they will 9 times out of 10 say, well, can you show me? Do you have your veteran ID with you? So here the man has gotten a free meal without question, and the woman who's the veteran has to prove it. Mm-hmm. That, to me, is invisibility, because it's not even thought about. I often will ask people when I'm talking to them, I will say, close your eyes and see if you can picture 5 men that are veterans. And they all nod their head and say, yeah, I can do it without question.
Easier to do, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I say, can you picture 5 women? And they'll go, huh? I can't even think of one. And it may be their next door neighbor. It may be someone they go to church with. It may have been a school teacher, a nurse. Here in Huntsville, when I go to the doctors, and because I am not personally a veteran, I cannot go to the VA. I'm not eligible for it. So I go to regular doctors. But I'll go and we'll get to talking because it always comes up what I do. And with my service dog, they always ask about that. And I say, oh, yeah, I was in the military. I was in the Army. I was in the Marine. I was a nurse. I was a physician's assistant. I'm a doctor. And I was in the military. So there are, in Alabama alone, there are approximately 100,000 women veterans, which is a large number for a relatively small state. And nobody knows that they exist. And so there again is your invisibility. And they're warriors. They are literally warriors. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think the term warrior obviously applies to people who have seen combat. And of course, women, as we know, weren't even allowed to be in combat theater, or at least officially recognized as having done so. I believe that that's only been for combat theater anyway. It was 2015, I believe, correct?
17, I think.
2017. Okay. When we talk about visibility and invisibility, do you agree that some of that over time has been affected not just by policymaking, but the change in culture and society as a whole relative to not only the recognition of women outwardly of their service, seeing them as true soldiers and warriors in the same vein that you would their male counterparts, but also obviously fewer women served in earlier times when communities had a greater percentage of the population that were veterans, right?
Yeah.
And now we have a greater percentage of women in the military, but it's a volunteer service. So you have the change, the transition from obligatory service to voluntary that has an effect, has an impact on not only the numbers, but probably society's awareness as a community in how they support women, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I looked up some numbers and I was just kind of curious before our conversation. So the decline, and I think you have some of this on your site too. So folks, check out invisiblewarriors.org. There's a lot of great information on there. But you have almost less than 1% of the population now that are veterans and that have served. But here's something I don't know, Nancy. I know having a son that he had to sign up for selective service. That's still required, even though there's no draft. I don't recall that being the case for my daughter. Is there some resentment that you see from the male side that if women want everything to be equitable and equal, that they should sign for selective service when they turn 18 as well?
Yeah, and that really, if we get into culture and society and politics in general, that really becomes one of the issues, especially with the younger women. They'll talk about the fact that it's taken them so much of a fight to just be considered veterans and want to be considered women veterans. And to a certain extent, I get that. But then you turn around and they want us to fight for health care for them, which is women related. It's like we have a major VA clinic here in town that just recently got their first mammogram machine. So the women want fighting for better equity healthcare. They want those things. But yet when it comes to something like being called into service, you look at this, you look at Israel, you look at a lot of the other military organizations around the world. They all have very large populations of women, and they are required just as much as the men. You get a kickback from the women in this country. If we want to do it, we've decided to do it on our own. We don't want to be told we have to do it.
Yeah, did that too. As we know, plenty of men volunteered regardless of a draft or selective service sign up.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a curiosity as we were coming into the conversation. I come to that question from the standpoint of, I hope that it's not creating even more of a feeling of resentment, but I would almost imagine that it probably is, because to the point you made about how you're just now getting a mammogram in your local VA hospital. I mean, that's long overdue, right? And women do have different healthcare needs. It just feels like sometimes fight for civil rights and for equality gets convoluted and entangled in a strange way that maybe it shouldn't with other issues.
One of the things that I just found out a week or so ago, which I think is really interesting but very telling, is that up until 2023, the motto for the VA was, "We serve our men and their widows."
Oh, wow. Till 2023.
Till 23.
What is it now?
I don't know what it is now. They have changed it, but I haven't had the time to look and find out what it is.
I'm curious. I'll have to look. I mean, I'm glad it's changed. Let's hope it's changed for the better.
One of the things, I'm going to jump back a little bit. This last year has seen the largest, and again, I do not know the statistics, I just know baseline that it's happened, the largest increase in numbers joining the service from a long time. It's higher than it has been in many years.
What do you think's driving that?
Well, I think it's the what's going on in the world right now, and what's happening overseas and in the Middle East. I think we're worried about what's going to happen in the future. And so people are standing up and saying, I want to make sure that we are protected. But women are the highest number of the population joining the service. They are joining in higher numbers than men.
We hear a lot nowadays about the such a concern about a decline in working age men. And I'm sure that there's some correlation to their desire to be in the service. But in as much as I support attention to that and trying to help, you don't hear much about what women's struggles are, and then relating it back to the military in terms of I'd love to hear more about what is that inspiration. It's courageous, it's brave. Men are rightfully so. They receive accolades for stepping up, as you said, regardless of requirement or not. You just don't hear as much accolades for women. At least I haven't personally.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
And I think in part, some of it is that by joining the service, you get a more stable life. You get food, you get a paycheck, you get someplace to live, you get order, and it's different than just living in the chaos of the world right now. So I think that's part of why the women join, and it's why men join too. But again, the thoughts and the feelings and the emotions and the culture for women and men are different. And each person is an individual and unique. So each person brings their own background, their own feelings, their own thoughts. But there are things that you can see that are unique to the different sexes. So a man's not going to say one thing where a woman is going to say, yes, that's why I joined him. A lot of the trauma, 9 out of 10 women in the military have had some sort of PTSD, and 1 in 3 statistics state, and we really think that the numbers are higher, but that's what is stated right now. 1 in 3 have had some form of military sexual trauma. And a lot of times research shows that for women especially, a lot of this mental health has actually come from prior to their joining the military, and it's just been exacerbated by being in certain circumstances. And I think they think, well, I want to get out of what I'm living in now, so I'm going to go into the military to get away from it, only to find out that it just sometimes makes it worse.
Yeah, that makes sense. For men as well, a lot of times pre-existing conditions can be highlighted, unfortunately, or exacerbated by the nature of service. Yeah.
And I am not saying that men don't have these issues. What I'm trying to show is that it's easier to understand when it happens in a man's life. Mm-hmm. Women in general, and men don't either, but women don't talk about to the outside world. They don't talk about situations. They don't share situations. They bottle it up. They keep it inside, and that causes the depression and anxiety and the PTSD and all of these different mental health issues. And that's why you don't see them out of their homes in 2 years.
It's fascinating to me because broader research about how women use way more words during the day than men to express themselves, that they're more likely on average to seek out counseling if they're having issues than men. The traditional feeling around that and around the research even is that men keep things bottled up more than women. So what would you say is sort of flipping that on its head in the case of women veterans?
And it is true when and this is fascinating to me, it's true when they're in the community of other women veterans. They do open up, they talk. We're getting ready to have our 3rd retreat in a couple of months, and I have seen at both of the retreats that we've had in the past where we're not talking about any of these situations. We're just sitting there playing cards and having a good time and laughing, and the women just start vomiting out stories and well, this happened to me and things like this, because they know that the other women are going to, at least on one level, understand what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Where I don't even understand a lot of what they're talking about because I did not experience it. I understand it better than a lot of other people do, because I've been involved in it for so long and I've heard so many people. But if there's somebody who's from your church, for instance, that's never had any military exposure, is talking to you, they're not going to say anything because, number one, they're afraid you're not going to understand it. Number two, they're afraid that you're just going to say, oh, it's not that bad. Come on, just suck it up. Put on your big girl panties and get over it. And so they've had that so often that it's just easier to not say anything.
I'm going to take us back for just a second to where I mentioned I got kind of nerdy for a minute or two before we had this conversation. I looked up just a few short statistics. Here's some things that I pulled out of that quick little search, and relative to the decline of American servicemen and women. We had people coming back into their communities. 11% of the population served approximately around World War II and became veterans. Vietnam, it was 15 to 16%, and Iraq, 6 to 7%. So granted, you've got the impact factor that we talked about before, about what women were permitted to do, how they were categorized, even if they were serving, how they were recognized or not, that can skew these numbers probably in terms of just women's service time. But with that said, one of the things I think you hit on here, and it relates to what I saw on your website, and then I got more curious, and as I said, I looked up these numbers. It seems like one of the things that probably affects all veterans, but especially women because of some of the unique challenges that they do have, is that there's no community of veterans like themselves to come home to in significant numbers the way that there has been in the past. So wouldn't you agree that part of the challenge for women veterans, and veterans as a whole to an extent, but I'd say especially women, and we'll talk about why here in a second, there's not a community of understanding that you can join when you rejoin society after service that's going to be empathetic in a way, or even understand what you're dealing with. I also want to talk to you a little bit about how maybe in spite of the Deborah Sampson Act, in spite of, and there's several pieces of legislation that continue to be brought forth, it was signed into law by President Trump in January 2021, but there's others. Improving Menopause Care for Veterans Act of 2025, the Service Women and Women Veterans Menopause Research Act, also 2025, Veterans Infertility Treatment Act of 2025.
We have to give credit. We have to give credit. They are moving ahead. It's just slow.
And government is slow as molasses. That is true. I agree. I, in part, give credit, but I also think it's kind of sad. And this is a nonpartisan show, so I'm going to be equally as finger pointing in all directions by saying that the Deborah Sampson Act was signed into law by President Trump, but all these others that I was naming, they're still in motion. They're still stuck in the process. There's a lot of attention on it. That's the good news, maybe more than before, but it still dismays me to think that so many of these are still churning through the process. And as we know, there's so much legislation that never sees the light of day to get passed into law. So I'm hoping that, as I'm sure you are, that we can continue to shed light on the need for these changes. Let's talk some more about what some of the other challenges are specifically that women are facing. Can you think of a story or two that particularly touched you or concerned you about why things need to change?
Well, there's a couple of issues, and going back to the political for a second, even the Sampson Act is when, and this happens all the time, but when they start working with and trying to put into law these different acts, oftentimes they get rolled into larger things so that it washes out the value and the meaning. So even though that act is very good and a very specific act, it got molded into other things. Mm-hmm. So that,
to your point, I think the actual thing that passed was named after men instead. It was Johnny Isaacson and David P. Rowe Veterans Healthcare and Benefits Improvement Act of 2020.
Yeah. And so even though it's there in part, it's not Number one, it's not up front. It doesn't get, and it has helped. It has done. And I will say that we are moving ahead a little bit. But in today's government, something came up just the other day where they're trying to move women back away from women have no right being at the front lines. They need to be back in admin positions. So they're trying to reel in and move us back historically from where we got in 2017 to back earlier.
Is that just rhetoric in your opinion, or is that a proposal, any kind of?
Texas is trying to do it. So it's really getting very serious. So that is really a step back and very sad to see all of that happening. But it fits with the male philosophy with that women don't deserve the same kudos that the men do. So that's the one thing. The examples in where you're saying women don't have the groups to talk with, I'll give you a story that just happened a couple of weeks ago. I answer all of my phone calls because I never know who it is that's going to be calling and asking me for help. So unless it says spam, I'm going to answer it. And it was about 6:30 at night. We were driving to Mobile, which is 6 hours away from here, to go to a military conference. Mm-hmm. And we're driving into tornadoes. It's a horrible storm. I had no business answering the phone, but I did. And there was a gentleman on the other end who said, "Hi, my name is Deputy so-and-so from Coleman County." And I went, "I've never been to Coleman County. I didn't do it, honest." I had no idea why this deputy sheriff was calling me on a Friday night at 6:30 at night. I got, "I didn't do it, honest." And he laughed. And he said, "No, calm down. You're fine. I'm calling because I just left a woman's home, and she is in desperate need of your support." She was a veteran. He said he was a veteran too, and she was a veteran. He had issues with MST from being in the military. Her ex-husband had beaten up on her after service. Her 12-year-old son had just been arrested for the 10th time for burglary and breaking and entering. And she was about at the end of her wits. She didn't know what to do, and she was about to become one of the 22 a day that commit suicide. And he did not want to see that happen. He wanted to do something to help her. And he went on to say that she tried to find a community. Calhoun County is like 2.5 hours away from me. So not a whole lot I could do for her, but she had gone around in her community trying to find a group of women to talk to. She landed at one of the big name veteran organizations that we all know that has an active group there. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, and that can lead us into a whole nother rabbit hole about the people that go to those organizations are from World War II and Vietnam. All they want to do is sit around and drink and talk war stories from years and years ago. But she went trying to find a group that she could be a part of. She wound up getting roofied and raped in that organization. So that was the end of the line for her. She just was done and was so afraid. And the deputy said that he had spent probably an hour and a half Googling women veterans organizations in the state of Alabama, and Invisible Warriors is the only one that came up. We were the only one there that could help her. And I said, "I don't know what I can do, but let me look." So the whole next day, I did not go to the meetings I was supposed to go to. I spent the day in my hotel room on the computer Googling support groups for women veterans. And I called him back. I actually got a list of a few places that kind of sort of they weren't veterans, but they were women's groups. And I said, "We have an online platform. She can get on our online platform and talk to other women anytime she wants, day or night. They're all veterans. They all understand what she's going through. But it's not somebody who's going to knock on her door and say, 'Hi, I'm here. Fix me some coffee and let's talk.'"
Does Invisible Warriors have chapters around other parts of the country?
That's our goal. We want to do that. But right now we are focused on the northern Alabama area because I want to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is, it's me, myself, and I. I don't have a lot of volunteers. I don't have a lot of people stepping up to say, I want to help, which goes back to the whole issue of it's not important enough to volunteer for. It's not important to step up and be a part of.
And it's also a lack of awareness in general, right? Some people out there who wouldn't help more if they simply knew about what the challenges were, right? Or knew that it was a problem. Yeah.
That's why I'm here. I'm trying to let people know that
exactly.
these things exist, because we are at the point right now where if we had funding, if we had the people to support us, we could at least branch out into other locations. I've got Georgia and Tennessee and Michigan, all 3 states, asking me to come there and help do what we're doing here, there. And I just can't do it. I have to say no because I just don't have the people to help me with it. And I want to do it right, because a big issue that we have just had is that a year ago we were given a building, a piece of a building. We had 8 offices in a local business facility where we had intake offices where the women could come in and say, I can't get to my VA appointment. My car died and I have no way of getting there. But if I don't get there, I'm going to lose my appointment. It's going to be 8 months before I can get in to see somebody again. And we can find her transportation. They'll come in and they'll say, I just got kicked out of my house because I couldn't pay my rent for the last 3 months. We can try and find the money to help get their rent back. We can try to find them someplace else to go. We don't provide the resources ourselves. I'm not going to take that woman to the VA, but I can find somebody who will.
You're creating a community of women where women veterans can come together and feel a part of a group of people that has shared similar experiences. I'm sure that's very helpful from a healthcare, mental health, supportive standpoint, emotional, and so forth. Does it operate in such a way that it's sort of a hub for other resources? Like, let's say, for example, that women veterans need housing, or they're not sure how to go about taking full advantage of what they should be entitled to as a result of being a veteran, or healthcare we've talked about. That have you had a good bit of success in trying to connect women with resources?
That's our main function, is if somebody comes to us and says, we just signed an MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding. It's a quasi contract with another organization to do employment, because it's really difficult for anyone coming out of the military to write a resume that speaks the language of the non-military agencies. So if you are saying, yeah, I worked with such and such, and it's all these acronyms and it's all these, if you put that resume in front of somebody, they're going to say, well, this doesn't correlate with anything I'm looking for. I'm not hiring that person. And that might be exactly what they need. So we can send this person to that MOU that we've just written, and they can help them write their resume in a way that's going to get them a job. Most people do not know that Uber now has signed an agreement with the VA, so that if somebody needs an appointment to get to the VA, all you have to do is pick up the phone and call Uber and set up the appointment. So if somebody comes in and says they need to get to the VA, I'll pick up the phone and make the appointment for them. People are trying to apply for benefits, and the one main organization here in town that helps with VA benefits, you can wait 8 or 9 months to get an appointment to see them. Well, I need somebody tomorrow. I can't wait for my health care for 8 months. So we have other organizations that we reach out to. And a big concern that women tell us all the time is that, yeah, I'll call. I know this place is there, and I'll call them and I'll get voicemail. Or I'll get the receptionist and they'll say, yeah, they're not available. They'll call you back. And I sit and I wait and nobody calls back. So we call, and I don't get off the phone until I've talked to somebody. And so I will
Excellent.
help make that appointment for them so that they're not just drifting and finding a bad situation even that much worse. This building had just taken off and was getting to be very successful. And the gentleman that had donated the space to us got somebody who wanted to rent the spaces. I understand he needed the money, but we lost our building. And so now these women who had just gotten a little bit of security in their life where they knew they had somebody to help them, it's gone. So we're trying now to find a new building, and it's very difficult because everybody wants, and I understand it. If I had a building to rent, I would really need to have a heart for this in order to donate it. But there's got to be somebody up there who gets it and is willing at least to give us a break on rent or something like that. So the women, again, they could go to Wounded Warriors and Wounded Warriors can help them. But if you look at the Wounded Warriors site, every single event that's listed is for men. Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, I did see not too long ago where they had taken a group to the Capitol to meet with certain congresspersons regarding, it was about menopause for treatment for women in the military. It sounds like maybe there's still...
Organizations will throw in the one-offs. They'll say, well, we do this and we've helped with that. And a woman can go on a hike just as much as a man can. But if you've got 10 men and one woman, that's not going to feel real comfortable, probably.
So what do you think, Nancy, is the real impactful cultural shift that needs to change, and mindset that needs to change, perhaps? Because it sounds like from the stories you've told and what we're talking about right now, that we've really got an issue. Is it fair to say that it's still largely a culture, both within the military in active service, and then when you come out as a veteran, where the first thought is the need for the male soldier before the women? And if so, why is it still like that?
That's really one of the issues that I battle with.
To the women who come to Invisible Warriors, when the VA or other resources they've tried to reach out to themselves is failing them, what do you hear them say about what I just asked?
You've got to, this is where it gets really frustrating for me, because you've got, and it's oftentimes it's younger versus older women, but that's not always the situation. It depends on the individual situation. But a lot of the younger women will say, I'm just going to fight through it. Whereas the older women say, I just don't have the energy. I don't have the strength to do this. I'm just going to let it go. But yet on the other hand, you've got the women who are saying, we need the mammograms. We need the doctors that understand female issues. We need these things. We need the help that we're not seeing. So I truly do not know. And this is one of the things that we're doing surveys on. We have polls. We're trying to do research. If you look around at the other women veterans organizations that are out there, most of them are for camaraderie. They're things like, yeah, I'm going to help you create your own business, or yeah, we're going to have this party and we're going to have this party and they don't really get involved in the in-depth because it's hard. And when you can't get the women themselves to coalesce and cohese on what's going on, you're not only battling the outside, you're battling the inside. The closest thing that I can say is look at how long it took for women to get the right to vote. That started in the mid-1800s, and it wasn't until the 1920s until we actually got the right to vote.
And then Black women even longer.
Yeah. So it's not, and I'm not the most patient. I'm constantly saying, hey, God, give me patience. And then he just makes everything that much longer.
Well, yeah, but it's understandable. I'm coming to understand the source of the frustration, support. And it demonstrates too that passing laws and legislation is only the beginning, and it's only the start of trying to fix these things in a broad spectrum in society. This is primarily a federal issue. And then there's oversight organizations The final thing is funding any of it. There has to be a cultural mindset shift as well. We saw that with the civil rights movement and women's rights, broadly speaking. And I know that you and I talked a little bit offline too about, as you were just telling me some of the stories and you were talking to me about some of the challenges that that women veterans are having, broadly speaking, everything from things that the Deborah Sampson Act and policy results that were supposed to come out of that, or many things that you're telling me are stories and challenges that women continue to face. It was supposed to include increased attention to homelessness. I don't have a sense. I haven't looked up any numbers, but is homelessness a big issue for women veterans?
Twice
in a way
as
that
many women veterans are homeless as non-women veterans. Because there are also many of them single parents. They're divorced, they're for whatever reason, and they can't get jobs that I had referred to earlier. So there's a huge population of women that are homeless.
Have you seen any concrete positive progress after the passage of that act? I know you mentioned that, unfortunately, Secretary Hegseth under this administration, despite the fact that it was President Trump who signed the bill into law, that the secretary is now perhaps taking steps to pull back on support for women veterans. But in general, at the level of the VAs, for example, Veterans Administrations, have we seen any progress? Is it having an effect to help?
Yes and no. Progress is one step forward, three steps back kind of thing.
Right.
They are building and extending a lot of these clinics to add women's wings, but they're still based on the male philosophy.
I was about to ask if you felt that we were catching up with this, or are we still largely trying to force and retrofit into a aging system that wasn't designed with women in mind?
Yeah. One of the laws that you were talking about, and I can't remember the name of which one it is, but it's talking about putting clinics in rural areas. I can't tell you the number of times we've had to go to Birmingham to go to medical appointments because they didn't have the services here at this clinic. Like I said, up until recently, the women would have to go 2.5 hours to Birmingham or 2.5 hours to Nashville to the big hospitals.
It's frustrating to hear that they're still having the same issues.
Yeah, and like I said, I have to give credit where credit's due. There are some advancements that are going on, but for every advancement, there's a fallback. And there's, well, it's on the books, but let me see it happen.
Where would you say, we talked a lot about where you are there in Alabama, and I know you've said that you want to get it right where you are first and then expand. I would imagine that your online community especially has women from all over the country involved.
Yeah. And the stories are the same everywhere. One of my board members, the secretary of my board, is a veteran, and she's out just outside of Seattle. And she talks all the time about the problems that she has getting VA appointments. And I had said something in our board meeting yesterday about moving forward with something, but she says, that's never going to happen. So it's not just here in Alabama, it's everywhere. And I think the bottom line and what has got to happen before any of these other things actually fall into place. If you've got these laws and they're sitting on the books, but nobody implements them, nobody thinks they're important, nobody addresses the underlying issues, you're not going to move forward. So the bottom line is, yes, women serve. Yes, women have the right to do and receive the same benefits that their counterparts do. And until the society believes that, it's not just lip service, but believes that and can say, I know 5 women in this neighborhood that are women veterans, it's not going to do any good. So before we do anything else, but what is going to make that happen is education, money, volunteers to get out there on the streets, knocking on doors, let people know that this is a serious issue that needs to be addressed.
What sort of initiatives is Invisible Warriors engaged in? Any events focused on that awareness and activism?
One thing that I'm very proud of, and this is the second year now for that, in 1948, President Truman wrote into law the Women Armed Forces Integration Act.
Mm-hmm.
Most people have never heard of that. And it's what actually brought women into the service. Said, yep, you can fight in the Marines, you can fight in the Army, you can fight in whatever. He signed it into law on June 12th. June 12th has become Women Veterans Recognition Day. Ever heard of it?
I'm ashamed to say I have not.
Yeah.
June 12th. Okay.
June 12th. It is a holiday. It is a very significant day. And I'll tell you a story first, and then I'll tell you what we did about it. June 12th of this year, right there in Washington, they're in front of the cemetery, Arlington Cemetery. There's a huge Women Veterans Memorial. For the last 23 years, on June 12th, they've had a wreath laying ceremony there. It did not happen this year because the Marines were the only branch of the service who showed up. Every other branch of the service says, nope, we're being told we can't do it because it's DEI and it's for women.
Oh, wow.
So this is the first year in 23 years that honor did not take place. Last year in 2025, there were only 20 states, and I think at last count there were 50, but there were only 20 that actually acknowledged this as a holiday. Alabama was not one of those. And so I went and knocked on the door of our governor's office and said, we've got to do something. 100,000 women veterans in the state of Alabama, and we don't acknowledge the shame on us.
Right.
And we actually I'm still working on actually getting it a law. It's not a law yet, but she did write a proclamation saying that going forward, it would be a holiday in the state of Alabama. So we have had 2 years now in a row. We've had on June 12th, we've had a major celebration for women veterans. And it's this last year, we have a VA senior home here in the community called Tutfan, it's great. It's a really nice facility. And there were 9 women that are a part of that facility that were all in wheelchairs, were all in a variety of different medical issues, and most of them were seniors. One was actually quite a lot younger than me. She was in a wheelchair. We brought them. We gave them free admittance to this gala that we had, and they're all sitting there, and we're singing all the anthems for the different branches, and they're holding onto their chairs and rocking when it was their branch's time for their song, and they're in the background doing this with everything. And we had a wonderful speaker who was the first woman to be an advisor for the Army Rangers when they actually let in a couple of years ago, and she talked about all the issues and the trouble and everything of being in the Rangers as a woman. And so we've done that 2 years in a row, and that is a teeny tiny beginning. We've brought in a little bit of advocacy to let people, at least in this. So we are now the 21st state. We've increased it by 1. We're the 21st state. But excellent. I'll go around to the community and I'll say, have you heard about Women Veterans Recognition Day? No. So it's still, and I can't get the newspapers, the television. There were 2 TV stations supposed to come and video it and put it on the air. The next day, neither one of them showed up. What allowed them? 148, I think, if my memory serves me, 148,000 flew planes in World War II, taking supplies and people back and forth from the United States to Europe to be part of the war. That was dangerous.
I was just going to say that's combat service.
yeah. And when the war was over, they were told, thanks, go home. They didn't get benefits. They didn't get any acknowledgement or appreciation. It was just, thank you, go away. This is what we're fighting. But without people telling these stories, it was 1948, what's that got to do with me today? That's my fight right now, is trying to figure out what is it going to take to get people to take this seriously.
Well, Nancy, I think that's a great way to begin wrapping up our conversation, but definitely I've taken a lot of things away from our conversation today. Really appreciate you being with us. I just want to ask, what's one thing that you hope every listener, every policymaker for that matter, remembers after today's conversation?
Women serve too.
Yeah, thank you.
Simple.
Absolutely. Well, let's have hope for the future. And thank you so much for the generosity of your time and talent. And I know that it takes a lot. I've been in the nonprofit world most of my life. What was the one big thing you'd love to be able to do if you just had the funding to do it right now?
A building.
Well, if you're looking to support women veterans and you want to help Nancy find a physical location to expand her enterprise in that effort, please visit invisiblewarriors.org. What are other ways that people can reach you, Nancy?
There is something that's very simple that everybody listening can do. They can go to the page Crazy Good Turns.
Crazy Good Turns. Okay.
Yes. And what we're doing right there, right now, is they are looking for nominations for nonprofits of the year.
Okay.
And the one that receives the highest number of nominations gets $10,000.
Is there a link through your website on Invisible
There
Warriors?
will be. I'm working on putting it up right now. Yep. All you do is put your name in, the name of my organization, and say why you think we're a benefit to the society.
crazygoodturns.org. Nancy, thank you so much for sharing your experiences, the stories, the insights today. This conversation reminds us, I think, of what good public policy can do and what we have to do beyond just passing a law. And because often the real work begins after. It's about ensuring that those policies truly improve lives. And the purpose of this show is largely to just talk about how policy impacts everyday people like me, you, Nancy here. And please visit invisiblewarriors.org. If you can give some of your treasure in a donation, contact Nancy, have a deeper conversation. Take the time to go through her website and really begin to understand the challenges that women veterans face, and also be inspired by the positive things, the stories that are shared there, and how women veterans, despite their hurdles, still serve our great country. Thanks for joining us. This is Policy for Normal People. I'm Christy Amada, founder of Amada Development Services, where I help organizations turn complex ideas into clear, meaningful communications and build trust. Listen to this and previous episodes on Spotify and Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. This episode was proudly sponsored by my company, Amada Development Services. Thanks everyone for being here. Until next time, stay curious and keep asking the good questions. Thanks so much, Nancy. See you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.